Hello everyone, so this is Olivia Mugenga and I'm here in Kigali, Rwanda, sitting with my father, the original Mugenga. And every time I talk to him, I always feel very inspired. So I thought I wanted to condense all the wisdom into one interview. So, hi Daddy.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So just I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions that my friends always ask you or my family. I'm gonna ask you a couple of questions. Feel free to answer in English or you can mix with French or Kinyarwanda. We can add subtitles if needed. So feel free. Okay?
Okay.
You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My first question is, so you're from a very poor village in Nyanza, Butare. Well, what used to be Butare. And grandmother, your parents were not fortunate enough to go to school, so they were not able to learn how to read and write. So how were you able to differentiate yourself and get out of that environment and go to USA and get a master's degree and come back and do all you were able to do with very little support from your parents? How did you go from Nyanza, the poor kid in Nyanza, to an MBA holder in Indiana?
Oh, thank you for that question. Where I don't know where I can start, but as I told you, it was not easy. First of all, I didn't have any backing. My father and my mother were not living together. And you understand that in this situation, it's only my mother who was thriving. And being a peasant, she didn't have much to do. But I was fortunate, I was blessed, because I was a brilliant kid in primary school all the way through. But when I got to the end of the primary, when I was in P6, then because of the discrimination that was prevailing here in this country, I was not allowed to go straight to secondary school.
Wow.
Can you imagine that although I was first of the class all the time, but I had to do P6 3 times?
I know.
So I don't know, in 1973, I don't know, maybe they made a mistake, but I was able to get to secondary school. And this was in Nyanza. My first my first 3 years of secondary school, it was in Nyanza. And then I had an opportunity, and that's why I was a brilliant kid. I didn't have any problem passing all the classes. So I went then for my next 3 years of secondary school in Bgimana. I already showed you the school.
Yeah, I know the place.
You remember the school with blue iron shades?
Yes.
You can see it when you're on the road to Nyanza.
How were we paying? Who was paying tuition?
Fortunately at that time, it was not much money.
Okay.
In primary school, we only had to pay 15 francs, and my mother would strive to get it.
Oh, okay.
In secondary school, I was supported by my uncle, you know, my uncle, Gerard Kanamugire.
Yes.
Unfortunately, he was killed in the genocide, but this is the one who was helping me with tuition. But he was motivated to do so because he knew he was paying for a kid who was not going to fail.
Right.
So I went in, as I told you, I graduated from secondary school from Gimana, and this was in 1979.
After 3 trials.
Yeah, exactly. And then I had to start university. Once again, I was lucky to be allowed into University of Rwanda. And I did 3 years in mathematics and physics because most of my schooling has been sciences,
I know.
especially mathematics and physics. And then after that, of course, the same story happened again.
Discrimination.
This means that when I finished the 3 years, usually I was supposed to go on and finish what we called at that time a licence degree. And I was stopped, and I was forced to go and teach in secondary school. My first teaching experience was in Zaza, which is a small town in the East Province, and I was teaching in a seminary. I was teaching mathematics and physics. This was in 1982.
Wow.
I was only 22 and some years. I
You
was
were a
still
college
young,
professor.
a bit like your age. Yes. And then, but this was too late to stop me because I was an ambitious guy, and I said, well, I don't see why I shouldn't get my licence degree. I see that the politics here or the policy
Climate,
here is not to forbid me, to prevent me from going further in my studies. But it was too late because at that time I was a bit grown up and I could save my own money. The first thing I did, since I was far away in a remote area in Zaza, then I managed to talk with the Ministry of Education guy who was in charge of appointing teachers, professors of secondary school. So I remember it's so funny, but I only invited him and we had chicken together. And then I said, well, but how did you come with appointing me in Zaza? This is too far from my home.
Right.
I was born in Nyanza. There are schools in Nyanza. There are schools in Butare. There are schools all the way in Jimana, in Kaunga, in Tigari. But you sent me in Zaza. Can you please, affect me in Nyanza or in the area, in a certain area in Nyanza, which he accepted. And then I was affected in a secondary school in Butare. They called it École Agricole et Vétérinaire de Butare. This was this was a school that was subsidized by French. So I went there, I was a professor, and I was in the town of Butare. And then I learned that in Burundi, you could go on and study. So the only issue was to have money.
Right.
So what I did, I tried to save money. Do you know how much I was paid at that time?
How much?
18,000 Rwandan francs a month.
Wow.
You know how many dollars this is?
Very little.
Yeah. Let me put it in
little.
dollars. How would it be?
18,000.
It's less
$20.
than $20. Yes. You see? So this was not, with that money, this was just enough to buy food and clothing. But then I said, well, I have some thinking abilities. I know that God created me with thinking ability.
Yes.
And then I said, I'm going to try to see a way to get the money. And you know what I did?
What did you do?
So there were some teachers, French teachers at the same school, and they had their children. They were sending them in different schools in Butare. There were some Belgian and French schools. And then I proposed them to teach them mathematics, and I was paid 1,000 francs an hour.
An hour?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I did that for about 2 years, and I managed to save 800,000 francs,
almost a million.
which was above $1 million of Burundian francs. So I decided to go. I took a letter, and I took a piece of paper and a pen, and I wrote. And then I said, let me tell you what I said. Je ne suis plus disposé à œuvrer dans l'enseignement secondaire comme professeur. Alors j'ai signé.
So Daddy, you were saying, then you got to Burundi. So from Nyanza, you got to Burundi.
Yes, and in Burundi, I met your mom.
I know.
Met your mom. This is what I met your mom. Actually, I was quite attracted by a beautiful young lady who was very smart and brilliant. And you know me, I'm attracted by brilliant ladies.
I know.
Yes, and then of course I came after Burundi. I came and I was for quite some time a professor in a secondary school here called the Upper Cup. I was a mathematics professor. And then I said, well, and your mom came and we got married sometime in '89, and she was well paid. Actually, she was better paid than I.
Ooh la la.
She was working for the UNDP, and I was working in the secondary school. She was like making 3 times my salary a month. So I said, well, and she has a degree. She had a degree in management. And I said, maybe it would be a good idea to change my major. And then I decided to go in the United States. And of course, it was
Just like that.
Yeah, I decided because, of course, I didn't see much what was going to be my future. So after having discussed with your mom, I decided to go to the US. And I just had some little money left after my ticket.
Right.
And I had $600. Can you imagine?
Wow.
A guy
Showing up in US.
showing up in the US with only $600.
Wow.
And I was first in Pennsylvania.